Nonprofits are not trying to solve the bigger problem in a sustainable way. It's just the mindset where we want to solve the problem which we really don't know, or we are not visionaries enough to be able to solve that problem.
One question I get asked a lot is, how do we take some of the background of technology and apply it to development?
Welcome to the Inside Forbes Councils podcast. Each episode shares transformative insights and advice from members of Forbes Councils, a group of invitation-only communities for successful executives and entrepreneurs. This is Inside Forbes Councils.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the second episode of the Inside Forbes Councils podcast. My name is Stephen Ganoza, and I'm the producer of the Inside Forbes Councils podcast. Well, we all know that disruption and competition drive innovation, and innovation drives profits for businesses. But what about nonprofits? What role does competition play? If a nonprofit innovates and solves a problem, does it put itself out of business? What lessons can be applied from tech startups to nonprofits? Well, today we're going to hear from two Forbes Councils members to discuss some of these issues. We'll hear from Christa Preston, the Executive Director of Embrace Culture, and Prasoon Kumar, founder of Billion Bricks. They'll discuss how a mindset of disruption may help nonprofits affect more change. So let's get started. Christa Preston is the Executive Director of Embrace Culture. After a career in tech, she made the transition from the for-profit world to the nonprofit world. She brings her experience in Silicon Valley to Africa, applying the development process to her nonprofit work.
I'm Christa Preston. I'm the Executive Director and the founder of Embrace Culture, which is an organization based in Uganda working to build the social movement for children that have cognitive and or developmental disabilities. Typically, you know those as autism and Down syndrome. One question I get asked a lot is, how do we take some of the background of technology and apply it to development? And a term I hear a lot is this term called the last mile. The actual definition of the last mile is people who live on less than $2.50 a day. Now, that's actually 1/3 of the population of the world, meaning the last mile has $5 billion in spend in a year. That's a very big market, and it's a market that's ready to be disrupted. So how do we disrupt this market? Well, technology companies have been asking that same question for years. So what we want to do is we want to take the principles of those technology companies and apply them to the last mile. And we can do that with pretty much 6 principles. Great theory that works with this is what's called human-centered design. Don't create in a vacuum, create with the potential users. You have to go and experience their lives. You have to move with them for a day, 2 days, and just see what they're doing and how they're interacting with their space. And then design. Don't say this is a problem because media says this is a problem, so I'm going to create a solution for that. Because what always happens is these great technology solutions are developed, but they can't plug and play into our space. They require a behavioral change or a technology that's not available, and it creates more issues than it does good. That's another piece of it. So if 1 is human-centered design, 2 is consider what technology is actually available in the country. You hear a lot about smartphones. Smartphones are coming. iPads are coming. Africa tends to do this leapfrog effect, but it doesn't mean that it's there. And you can't create a solution that's still 2 to 3 years out. One thing I don't hear many organizations talk about, but has been a big consideration in our work, is bandwidth. So before we can even start talking about the type of phone that you're using, we have to talk about how much internet can you access, how fast is your internet, and what does it cost you? Even if you have a smartphone, that doesn't mean that you can watch a video, even if your phone's capable of watching a video. Again, this all comes back to the first part, human-centered design. I would say probably point 3 in your process of doing this is again, focus on needs. So if you're living on $2.50 a day, again, $5 billion market, lots of power there, but this isn't expendable income. They are purchasing something that they need. This is daily living. That doesn't mean that great innovations can't come into this space. It just means that you have to come up either with how they can access a need easier or do transactions easier. Things like that are going to have the biggest impact. The next point is think about your minimum viable product. So after you've gathered all of this data, again, don't assume that the solution that you've developed, even if you've done all this work, don't assume your solution is the greatest thing since sliced bread. You have to create a minimum viable product, take that into the field, and actually start to test it. Get a lot of user feedback and start to iterate. I say all this because, again, in the tech world, everyone's probably nodding and shaking their head and saying, yes, 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 of course. But in the nonprofit world, this isn't how it's traditionally been approached. A lot of that has to do with, kind of how our funding comes in. But typically, an organization would say, I have tried this program in XYZ country. I'm going to come in and make it big. Or I know that a problem is education. I know that I can educate girls. We're going to do this whole program, roll it out to thousands right away because everybody wants to see those big impact numbers. But they don't think about creating the best solution, because you always hear this, any solution is better than nothing, which is not necessarily true. Another big point I would make is build a strong team. That's within an organization and also with the people that you're working with in the community. Another point that often gets discounted. So a lot of times when I'm advising some social entrepreneurship, some nonprofits coming into a new country, especially coming into Uganda where I've done a lot of work, they will say, oh, can you recommend somebody who can do X, Y, and Z? And I'm like, yeah, but I'm in disability. You should be talking to someone in solar, for example, if that's what your company is going to do. They discount the fact that knowledge and expertise exists in the country. So just because you're going to a last mile country, a developing country, still look for the best talent, still fight to have the best talent. And look for that in your board, look for that in your employees. Don't kind of bring your expectations down because of where you're going. And then I think my last point in all of this is once you've done that, once you've done design theory and you've come up with an MVP and you've tested your MVP, you've brought on lots of great advisors, you've built up a strong team, you're ready to take it to scale. Before you do, start back at step one and do it all over again, but this time be thinking about your sales and marketing distribution. So how do you distribute the product? How do you market the product? Go back to your human-centered design, get input from your potential users on where they see advertisements and things like that. Because again, the more traditional, just using that, just assuming I should use these traditional marketing streams just because it's worked for somebody else, that's not how we disrupt an industry. That's how we continue with how it's been going. And that's why Silicon Valley has been so successful. That's why some tech companies have been so successful. They've completely disrupted how we've done marketing. You see that with the most successful nonprofits as well.
Are you a successful executive or entrepreneur with insights to share? Learn more about our invitation-only communities at ForbesCouncils.com. Forbes Councils members have the opportunity to collaborate with fellow business leaders to overcome challenges and create new opportunities. Members also have access to support benefits that help them save time and money, and a platform, Community Voice, on Forbes.com, through which they can amplify their voices and exchange ideas. See if you qualify at ForbesCouncils.com.
Prasoon Kumar is the founder of Billion Bricks. Like Christa, after years of working in the for-profit sector, he entered the nonprofit space. Prasoon left a career in commercial real estate to start Billion Bricks, where he brought a business mindset with clearly defined goals. But he's discovered that more than a business mindset, it's competition among nonprofits that really may bring more meaningful impact.
We as a society have changed and we continue to change, and everyone talks about innovation and disruption these days. And I think nonprofits need to follow on a similar path as well, because we as people, our needs are changing, our aspirations are changing. And it's as much as it's true for you and I, it's also true for the poorest of the poor in the world as well. And you can see that a lot of corporations are shifting their focus to expand their markets, to stay competitive, and to be able to address what they call as business with purpose. And I think nonprofits need to start looking at the same methodologies and working efficiencies as well, where they're not looking at purpose alone, but they are looking at the business side of the purpose as well, to make sure what they do is effective and is really make sweeping changes. And this is the key difference between a business, right? Business wants to expand its market share. A nonprofit actually ideally should be shrinking its market share. So that's the key difference, right? So ideally, in an ideal world, the nonprofit's market share should shrink and we should close down, right? So when the homelessness ends, Billion Bricks would close down shop, right? But I think what happens is that nonprofits are not trying to solve the bigger problem in a sustainable way. It's the incremental thing which keeps them alive all the time. And I don't know if they're doing it on purpose. It's just the mindset where we want to solve the problem which we really don't know, or we are not visionaries enough to be able to solve that problem, right? And I think that that makes it very hard. And I remember recently looking at this campaign on winterization in India, where these nonprofits, every year winter comes, there's a call for asking for blankets. And every year they get funded with millions of blankets they give to the homeless people, and the next cycle comes. And we designed Weatherite as a tent to solve that problem, where you would not need blankets for those people. And the Weatherite could actually last for a couple of years. And we didn't get a lot of traction from the government and support because it disrupts their cycle of functionality. Billion Bricks' vision is really to end homelessness in the world. So we are not looking at being an organization which would say, oh, we built 1,000 homes or 10,000 homes or 1,000,000 homes, right? Because even that will not solve a problem. We're talking about 1 billion people today who don't have access to homes, and 2 billion in the next 15 years. So we are looking at systemic solutions that anybody in the world can take and really replicate at mass scale. And that requires a very different kind of thinking altogether. I think disruption really needs competition, because a lot of us as business people know the importance of competition, right? If we are monopolistic, it kills innovation, it kills creativity, and it makes us complacent, right? I mean, we've seen it through, for example, the car industry in the United States, right? How it was monopolized by just 2 or 3 group brands, and how it kind of went down till competition came in from Japan. And it's the same I find in the nonprofit sector as well. The problems we are dealing with is huge, right? I mean, for Billion Bricks itself, you can look at the fact that we are dealing with 1 billion people who don't have access to homes. And I don't know of a lot of organizations which are trying to solve the problem that we are doing. Maybe 5 or 10 organizations which are at a global scale, and then hundreds of organizations which are very tiny, solving at a very small little level. So for 1 billion people, there are literally like 5 or 6 organizations which are trying to do. And we, each of them, have enough space to work with 200 million people who need our help. And there's no competition in it. There's no questions which get asked on what you're providing, right? I mean, people come in and tell me that Prasoon, Billion Bricks is doing great work, without even trying to see whether the work we are doing is really great. Nobody did that to me when I was doing commercial work. I wasn't doing great commercial work at that time. So what has changed all of a sudden when I've stopped away from commercial work and come into the nonprofit sector? So I think those are the things which make nonprofits complacent, where they start to think that they are doing really great work, and this is something which is really making a huge difference on the ground. But I would really ask the nonprofits also to go in and see whether the changes have been transformational as well. A lot of times nonprofits look at incremental change, but the incremental change is too slow. The rate at which salaries for people like you and I are increasing in the corporate world is jumping leaps and bounds in and day out, but not for the poor. If poor salary, even if it doubles from $1 to $2, they'll still be at the bottommost level of the pyramid. So we need to make sure that their salaries don't jump by 200%, but they need to jump by 1,000% or 2,000% for us to really make an impact. And the lack of competition in this field is not letting us do it.
Well, these are certainly some interesting thoughts on how nonprofits can increase their impact. The need for competition in this space certainly seems like something nonprofits need to embrace, especially as we see more corporate philanthropy and mission-oriented businesses. I want to thank Prasoon and Christa for sharing their experiences. We'll see you in the next episode.
This has been Inside Forbes Councils. Please be sure to subscribe to us on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you're a member of the Forbes Councils and would like to participate in our podcast series, please email your member concierge. If you're interested in joining a Forbes Council, learn more at forbescouncils.com.